Hello, hello, hello! Welcome back to Chris's Creative Corner. This is Season 1, Episode 12. I'm getting ahead of myself. Episode 12, not 13. Episode 12. And my name is Chris Cole, and I am a small-time published author. We are focusing today on Chapter 12 of my romance Porch Light, and we will also be taking 2 questions that I received from different sources. So, getting right into it. Today's questions for Chris. The first one comes from a Twitter friend who is a staunch believer in indie publishing, in self-publishing. Does not like traditional publishers, does not subscribe, does not want. And so their question is, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry? And I don't know enough about the publishing industry to be able to fully answer that with all the knowledge that I feel like I would need. All of that said, what I find really difficult about the publishing industry is the process you have to go through to even get someone to look at your book. You have to have the book completed, fully edited as much as possible, and you have to write a query letter, submit specific number of pages. You have to have a tagline or a log line or whatever you want to call it, an elevator pitch, something that you could pitch your story to someone in an elevator, which, is like a sentence long, essentially. You have to have all these things to sell your book. And then you can send it to 100 people. And 100 people will look at what you are trying to sell them, and they will be able to say yes or no based on whether you followed the basics of did they write a fascinating, interesting, exciting, the perfect query letter? Did they write the perfect log line or tagline or elevator pitch? Are the first 5 pages of their story absolutely perfect and make me want to read more? It's this idea of the unattainable. It shouldn't be so focused on selling your stuff. Authors do not want to sell or market their books. Authors want to write. I want to tell stories. And I'm doing my own marketing because that comes with the territory of being an independent published author or a small-time traditional published author. The publisher that I go through doesn't have like a marketing department. They don't have a sales department. Any book signings that I've done, I've organized and created and done all of those things myself because that comes with the territory. I want to share stories with people, and I have to play the game to do that. And ultimately, that's what I would say is the most frustrating thing. I don't know if it's ethical or not. I can't place a value judgment on the ethics of an industry that I'm honestly such a small part of. Such a small, itty-bitty, tiny part of that I don't have the qualifications to talk about the ethics of publishing. If I get into a big time position of being published and all that kind of stuff, sure, I'd be more than happy to talk about it. But in the meantime, unable to talk about because I don't know. The next question comes from one of my listeners / subscribers / friends / readers / all the things. Wonderful supporter. And they ask, does writing energize or exhaust you? And the answer is yes. I can get so excited about a story idea, and I set things up and I start writing it and I'm so excited, and then I'm like, good God, I'm tired. And then I'll work on other writing or something. The reason that it took me so long to write Puppy Love versus Porch Light was the idea of my emotional exhaustion. going through a hard time, going through the pandemic. It took me a long, long time to figure out where I could see the story going. I knew there was a story, and I knew it was solely based around the many fears that I have and addressing those fears. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. I didn't realize the emotional work that I was doing while I was writing Puppy Love, but all of these things that I was afraid of, I started putting in the book. So, yeah. Writing energizes me when I have a new idea and I'm excited to do it. Writing energizes me when I have like an epiphany, or I'm just on a roll and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've written like 5,000 words today. I feel so fantastic. And all of those things also exhaust me. They're tiring because it's work. Writing is tiring because it's work, and it's energizing because it's something that my soul craves. So the answer is yes. I guess technically the answer would be it depends for all my counseling people out there. The answer is it depends. I'm sure you're shocked to hear that. So now that we are done with questions for Chris, we're going to move on to Porch Light, Chapter 12. I need to take a look at Chapter 11 because it's only been a week, but it's been a week. Chapter 11 was Lonely and Alone. Oh, that's what it was. Oh yeah. Oh, this is where I introduced Tony. Oh, Tony. So, in Chapter 11, Nick heads to Nashville. And he's in Nashville, and he and Casey, they miss each other. Nick's kind of struggling by himself with recording, and so they ask him to stay longer, and his work kind of puts up a little fuss about it. They're like, you need to come back to work, and he's like, I am working, like, you will be fine without me, like, you have plenty of people in there. And the hotel manager was like, no, I fired the front desk manager, so you need to come back. And he's like, that was your choice, not mine. Like, you already knew you were down one person, and then you decided to fire another person. Like, what are you doing? Not my responsibility. And then he decides to head down to the lounge in the hotel where he's staying, and a young man named Tony, with kind of a southern accent, greets him, and he works for Out Gazette in Nashville, which is a bi-weekly publication. And they kind of start talking, and they get a little flirty, and Tony ends up just wondering if there's anything he could do to make Nick feel less lonely. So that's Chapter 11. Now we're on to Chapter 12. Are you fucking kidding me? It's the name of Chapter 12. I love naming chapter titles like just random statements. So Chapter 12. Are you fucking kidding me? I woke up the next morning to Tony climbing out of my bed, his bare butt facing me as he looked for his underwear and the clothes strewn about the room. Morning, I said softly, stretching a little. You leaving already? He found his underwear and pulled them on, then turned to me with a grin. Yeah, I've got to get back home before I head to work, but I'd love to see you again. Yeah, that would be fun. I shifted and winced slightly. Tony was a very enthusiastic lover. I was going to be sore all day, probably. He slowly crawled back onto the bed and kissed me deeply, his tongue tracing my lips seductively. He pulled back for a moment. You sure you don't have time for... He gave a wicked smile. I'm sure I could show you my good morning special. What's that? Oh... He rendered me speechless as his lips moved down my body, lower and lower until his mouth began smoothly working against me. He was very good at waking me up. In fact, it was, hard not to be up all day thinking about the night I'd had. Luckily, I didn't have to just imagine it. He came to my hotel room every night I was there for a week and a half. I finished all my work on Thursday, and we found ourselves doing the interview he'd asked me to do as pillow talk. It definitely made me open up in a way I never had before. Well, to anyone except Casey. How have your family and friends reacted to your newfound success? For the most part, everyone has been really supportive. It's always cool our friends don't treat us really differently. We're still just Nick and Casey and Kennedy and Levi. We're still just their friends who are in a band. In some ways, I imagine they're not paying much attention. He stared at me, his phone sitting on the sheets between us, recording my every word. You said for the most part. Are there people who resent you or don't support your success? I sighed, my head resting on my arm. My parents. I'll never forget when I was a kid. We were all sitting around watching TV, and there was a kiss between two guys, and my parents were so grossed out. It really stuck with me. So I didn't come out until this year. Actually, I came out to them the night we got our recording offer, and my dad said he didn't want a pedophile in his house. I haven't spoken to him since. My mom only called me once to ask if I'd changed my mind. I told her I was still gay and not to call me until she's ready to love me for who I am. He raised his eyebrows, looking impressed and also sad. How does that make you feel? I sighed. If I didn't have my friends, if I didn't have Casey, I would feel completely alone and overwhelmed. But I guess I'm also the kind of person who thinks family is important to a point. I know there are some families who say they'll be there for each other no matter what, and they are, and that's great. But clearly, that's not my family. I thought it was, but it's not. So now I have other people in my life like that. Your friend Casey? Yeah. It's funny. We used to call each other bromo, like because I was gay, it couldn't just be a regular bromance, so we were bromos. I love Casey, and he loves me. He tells me that all the time. If he were gay, I would totally want to be with him. He's everything I think a man should be. Strong yet sensitive, compassionate for people in need, amazingly chill and sweet while being a fierce friend. Tony grinned and itched his nose. So he's never shown you any physical affection? No lines have ever been crossed between you and your bromo? I lightly shoved him in the chest. He'll always be special to me, but I know where we stand. He sighed and stretched, his slim naked body shining in the moonlight through the window. Can you think of anything else you want to add? Anything you want our readers to know? You could tell them their editor has a beautiful body, and I've enjoyed getting to know every inch of him. I leaned forward and planted a kiss on his lips, moving to kiss his neck and jaw. Wait. He leaned over and shut off the recording. Okay, please continue. I laughed and rolled him on top of me for one last passionate night before I went back to reality. I left for King the next morning. Omar saw me off to the airport, thanking me for all the time I put in and assuring me this would be the last time we'd need to travel to Nashville to record anything for this album. Thanks for everything, Omar. I really appreciate all the work you're doing. We all do. Whatever you need from us, just let us know. I've been trying to work out some new gigs for you, big concerts and things like that. If I can swing it, you'll be opening for a huge band within a month of your debut album, if not earlier. Oh, can it be Neon Trees? I love them. I'll see what I can do. He gave me a firm handshake, and with that, I was off back home. I sent Sandy a message before takeoff to let her know I'd be able to work my shift tomorrow and Saturday morning, and I sent a message to my bandmates letting them know their vocalist was finally done. Almost before I could blink, I was landing in King's 2 Terminal Airport. I hobbled out as quickly as I could and found Casey there waiting for me. He grinned as he strode quickly toward me. Hey, Casey, long time no... He swept me into a kiss. His mouth moved against mine for several seconds before he released me and then immediately pulled me into a bone-breaking hug. What was that for? My voice was muffled as my face pressed against his shoulder. Are you drunk? I just really missed you. His voice was a whisper in my ear, and his tone sent goosebumps erupting across my skin. I told him everything about the experience of recording by myself on the way home. So that was all you did? Record and sleep? Sounds horrible. I grinned, feeling myself turn red, but suddenly I found myself saying, Yep, it was a pretty boring trip without anyone there. You and I could have had a good time. Oh yeah, but I have to admit I had a good time while you were gone. I looked at him confused. He caught the look on my face and quickly corrected himself. Not because you were gone, but because I totally hooked up with someone. What? Yeah, her name's Tatiana, and oh my god, she was the bomb. I mean, looks, personality, she had it all. And you slept with her? He grinned as we turned onto our street. Don't worry, I changed the sheets, but we might have permanently damaged the bed springs. She was a wild cat, and she went for hours. I mean, Okay, I get it. My head felt like it was full of bees. It was silent until we pulled up across the street from the apartment building. Oh, I did an interview while I was there too. For the band? Kind of. I met this reporter for a gay newspaper in Nashville, and he talked about our band and my role in it. It was weird, but nice. He nodded, looking proud. Cool. Anyway, I'm super looking forward to some sleep. Flying is really exhausting. The next morning, I got up for work and woke up Casey accidentally. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up. I just got used to not sharing with anybody, he said sleepily. Now I've got to get used to it again. It's all good. Have a good day. I got to work that morning and was immediately busy checking people out, trying to sign them up for the rewards and playing catch-up to the crazy happenings. Apparently someone came in during the audit shift the night before, loaded up on stuff from the market, and took off in a getaway car. I was definitely glad I missed that. And I fell back into my routine of work, church, and sleep until Monday after work, when Sandy called me into her office. She did not look happy. I have paperwork for you to sign. She slid the paper toward me. Disciplinary action form was written across the top of the page. My stomach turned to steel. As you can see, I filled out all the necessary information. It states you failed to show up for 3 shifts. Now, each of those would normally count as their own write-up. On the 3rd write-up, that would be termination. I've decided not to do that, however, and give you one last chance. You also have a space where you can make a statement. It just needs to be signed and dated after that. I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. This was the first time I'd ever been written up at this job. I guess it makes sense. I am sorry it happened, but they were circumstances beyond my control. I signed and dated the form, and she took it back. Now, as for the front desk manager position, my heart leapt. Diego and I agreed we needed to bump up the pay to indicate the level of responsibility the position requires. We appreciate your feedback, and we've offered the position to Heather. All the air was sucked out of the room. What? She's shown she's dependable, competent, and takes her responsibility to our hotel seriously. I looked at Sandy, betrayal setting into my every pore. How could you? With that little stunt you pulled in Nashville, how could I not? I've worked here for 3 years! She jumped at my shout. Do not yell. You need to calm down. Calm down? I was the one who told you to offer a pay raise. And then you give it to Heather? She's worked here for like 7 months. And she hasn't missed a day. You need to lower your voice. I've missed a total of 7 days in 3 years. And the only pay raise I got was 50 cents after I'd been here 2 fucking years. Stop shouting. My God, When are you going to pull your head out of your asshole and see where people who aren't making enough to even afford a place to fucking live? In fact, why don't you pull your head out of Diego's asshole, since you're the one saving him all this money to spend on his new Mercedes? Stop yelling. No! I stood up, grabbing my crutches. I need to figure out why I ever wanted more responsibilities in this fucking job. This is bullshit. This is my 2-week notice. I fucking quit. No, you're fired. You don't get to throw a fit in my office. Get out of this hotel before I call the police. All I saw was red as I hobbled out of the office. I made my way outside as fast as I could, Sandy following behind me to escort me out. At least she fired me. That way I could collect unemployment. And that is all for chapter 12. Shit hit the fan. What's Nick gonna do for work? And what's going on with Casey? He hooked up with Tatiana? Who the hell is that? Plus, we have the article to look forward to. That's always exciting. And the album to come out. And there's so many things to look forward to. So make sure to tune in next week on Chris's Creative Corner, where we go into lucky number chapter 13. And we'll get into some answers to the questions that I was just asking. And maybe we'll be introduced to more problems. My poor characters. I feel terrible for them. As I grin maliciously. Okay, that's all for this episode of Chris's Creative Corner. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the love and support I've been getting. I couldn't do this without your love and support. Again, so grateful. And we'll see you next week. Bye.